Hi everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow out of Diagnostics. We're back at the auction car lot looking at this 2008 Lexus IS250, 170,000 miles straight from the auction, and the customer complaint is no throttle and no steering assist. So let's confirm the customer complaint. It starts up fine and it just idles there. Gives you a red triangle. I'm pressing the gas all the way, no response. And then also we have a power steering and traction lights and all the lights, and the steering has no assist. So customer complaint confirmed. Let's scan it for codes and see if we can figure this one out pretty quickly. Alright, so full code scan here. We have a P2118, that's the only code stored in the engine computer. Throttle, actuator, control, motor, current, range, performance, that makes sense. And then in the electronic power steering, we have a C1554, power supply relay failure. Okay, so we have codes that will lead us in the right direction, hopefully. Let's do a little research on these codes and go from there. Well, first let's do a quick visual inspection under the hood. Everything's covered in plastic because Lexus does not want DIY people going in and fixing their own cars, apparently. But here's the throttle body. It actually looks original, doesn't look shiny and new. The connector looks fine, so it doesn't look like anyone's touched it, but you never know. So now let's do some research. Alright, first let's go for the throttle. P2118, throttle, actuator, control, motor, current, range, performance. And description says ETCS has dedicated power supply circuit. When the monitored voltage is lower than 4 volts, ECM determines there is a malfunction and the ETCS cuts off the current to the throttle actuator. For this reason, when the voltage is low, current's cut. So there should be a dedicated fuse right there, ETCS, going right to the throttle actuator control unit in the ECM, that's internal. And then here is the actual throttle body. Okay? So what we want to do is look up a wiring diagram. And sure enough, there is the ETCS fuse, 10 amp. Left side of engine compartment, engine room, fuse box number 2. So I want to find this fuse. It should be hot at all times. Get a test light out. Make sure it's continuous. Okay, took off the plastic. Here's the fuse box. ETCS fuse, 10 amp, 1, 2, third one down. Test light the battery negative. Let's check both sides of the fuse. So you can see we light up on this side. Bingo. Nothing on this side. So what, obviously the fuse is blown, but what caused the fuse to blow? It could be a failing throttle body, sure. So what I want to do, we could just pop a fuse in there, but would that fix the problem? I want to put a current loop in here and get the amp clamp out, and on the PICO scope monitor the current going through the circuit while activating the throttle, because we don't want this fuse to just replace the fuse and have it blow again. We want to see why it blew. Alright, so here's the setup. Here's the fuse loop. Current is going to go from this side of the fuse through the loop through the amp clamp this way. So we want to set it to 1 volt is going to be 10 amps, re-zero it, hooked up to the PICO. And now, before we even turn the key on, we want to set up the scales. And the sun is absolutely ridiculous today, so I'm just setting it on a 5 volt scale. Let's turn the key on. So it didn't activate the throttle yet. Let's clear out all the trouble codes. Okay, so we still have a power supply relay failure in the power steering, that's fine. No other codes in the engine computer, so let's fire it up. Still, no throttle response and no current whatsoever on that fuse. Let's do another smart scan. I'm sure we just set some codes. No? Well, let's go into ECM and look at some throttle data. Okay. So he says throttle motor off. Oh, we tried. We saw nothing on the current. Did it pop the fuse? Nothing. Alright. Let's check that the fuse is still good. This is pretty crazy. Alright, so the P2118 is back. Obviously we didn't fix the problem. So I had to check my connections at the fuse box, the two little jumper wires. One of them fell out because the fuse box is so small. So reinstalled those. Now we should have good connection. Turn the key off. Turn the key back on. Okay, there was a little something there. Let's fire the car up. Okay, now we have current. Now we have throttle response. No crazy current. It's less than 5 amps. And with the key on, the throttle does not actuate, so let's save that waveform. There we go. So maximum current was about 5 amp pulses. That's totally normal. It's below 10 amps, below the fuse rating. So I think we can call the throttle fixed. I'll put in the OEM fuse, and then next let's do the power steering. Alright, so throttle now works great. No more check engine light. That's one problem fixed and confirmed. Now, what about the power steering? So this code, C1554, you can see that power source relay malfunction is detected. Right there. What does that mean? It says reconfirm DTC. Replace power steering ECU assembly. That's it? They don't even want you to check powers and grounds? This is crazy. Here's a wiring diagram for the power steering circuit. And here's our control unit, power steering ECU. And that goes to the power steering torque sensor, left front of engine, and power steering motor, lower front of engine compartment. Okay. So what this thing is saying, it can talk, but it's saying we have a problem with the power supply, and that would be this EPS fuse 80 amp. So let's check that fuse. It's an 80 amp fuse, engine room, right rear of engine compartment. Alright, doing a little more research. EPS not working, code C1554. It doesn't hurt to Google it. If ALLDATA doesn't have any TSBs or any more helpful information, then replace the control unit. And in this case, the guy, Ibrahim Auto Electric, he shows where it is. It's under the battery in the right rear corner of the engine bay. And you know, he verifies the powers and grounds. It's a fat wire right here, that red one. The fuse is fine, you know, just visually. So we could go there. We could take the battery out and then check the powers and grounds on this unit, see if it cooked itself. But it needs a new ECU. Apparently that is a common failure. So indeed, under the battery, there is our electronic steering control unit. Here's the main power plug, including the ignition, little ignition wire, and the communication wires. So let's put some jumpers on here and at least measure powers and grounds. We know this thing can talk, so I'm not worried about powers and grounds, but we have to do that to be 100%. Maybe I'll just put a test light in there, like a 5 amp, to load it up a little bit, and then we'll turn the key on, measure the ignition power. Alright, so with the battery connected, we have very bright test lights on the power and ground right there, so not worried about that at all. Now let's turn the key on and measure the last wire, the ignition power. I'm sure it'll be fine because the module does talk. Like that. We'll use our little test light this time. Be careful, this terminal right here is live, so don't bump it against anything metal while doing this check. And yes, we do have a good power feed on this pin. There it is. So needs a new unit at the very least. Now, can we guarantee the power steering will work after replacing the unit? Not really, because then the power steering rack itself could be causing an overcurrent situation, but you have to start with the ECU.